It is not only Indonesians who live in the shadows of volcanoes. This is Petropavlovsk-Kamchatski. It is the capital of Kamchatka Krai. This is the starting point of our exploration, because if you were to decide to visit Russia's land of ice and fire, you too would begin here. So how do people live in Kamchatka? When did Russians first arrive in the Krai? What features make this place unique? What happened to the original inhabitants? Let's roll. Petropavlovsk population is roughly 180,000, and if we include its appendages, it goes up to 244,000. That is about 75% of all 322,000 people living in the Krai. The city is located 6,700 kilometers from Moscow. That's significantly further than San Francisco, which is just some 6,100 kilometers over the North Pacific Ocean. Kamchatka itself is about 472,300 square kilometers in size. Each human inhabitant has close to 1.5 kilometers of land, in which he can be freely chased by bears. When you arrive in Petropavlovsk, you will instantly be greeted by up to 3 local volcanoes: Koryaksky, Avachinsky, and Kozyelsky. They're all visible in good weather conditions from anywhere in the city. 2 of these giants are in fact active, and periodically they sneeze, as locals like to put it. Although Petropavlovsk and St. Petersburg are of similar age, you get the impression that humans have been living here for no more than 50 years, as the city cannot boast of significant architectural monuments. Most buildings here were built between the 60s and 80s, so the capital of the region looks like a very typical Soviet city, in very untypical surroundings. For the economy, there are both large and many small companies engaged in the extraction and processing of fish and seafood. They're especially active during salmon spawning season, from June to end of August. The city's port has every prospect of becoming an important point of the Northern Sea route, as facilities are being upgraded for this eventuality. As the Arctic melts due to climate change, this may bring significant growth to the city. In 2019, Kamchatka and Petropavlovsk welcomed more than 240,000 tourists. A significant increase can be attributed to the creation of cruise ship facilities in the port in 2017, bringing in a record number of visitors prior to the pandemic. Cossack units on the forefront of Russian expansion first reached these distant reaches around 1697, and it was around 1740 that a settlement was established in the vicinity of Petropavlovsk. This name simply means Peter and Paul, which is a reference to the 2 ships of Vitus Bering, a Danish explorer who was in the service of the Imperial Russian Navy. The town's strategic location on the eastern coast of the Kamchatka Peninsula, with the sheltered Avacha Bay at the mouth of the Avacha River, saw it develop to become the most important settlement in Kamchatka. Despite the incredibly remote location, the city was sieged in 1854 during the Crimean War. The Crimean War was a military conflict fought from October 1853 to February 1856, in which Russia lost to an alliance of the Ottoman Empire, France, and the United Kingdom. The war was an attempt by European powers to maintain the balance of power, as it looked like the crumbling Ottoman Empire might end up being swallowed up by Russia. Within the region, the primary concern of the Anglo-French allies was that cruisers of the Russian Siberian flotilla would operate against British and French trade, and so they preemptively attacked, and the Russians mounted an unbreakable defense of the Avacha Bay. As a result, the British and French suffered 209 casualties in the campaign, while the Russians some 115. So today, Petropavlovsk has the surprising title of the City of Military Glory. Prior to the collapse of the Soviet Union, foreigners were not permitted to visit Kamchatka. The city and the entirety of the Krai was shrouded in military secrecy. Klyuchevskaya, where a squadron of submarines of the Russian Pacific Fleet has been based since 1938, is still a closed town. It is called the Hornet's Nest in NATO, and there are plans to expand it with reinforced concrete shelters for its submarines. A missile fired from a submarine stationed in Kamchatka flies to anywhere in the United States in less than 17 minutes and to Europe in 19. So make no mistake, nuclear submarines are out there. You just can't see them. Throughout Kamchatka, the climate is greatly influenced by the Pacific Ocean, so it doesn't get nearly as cold as in other places in Siberia. A lot of climatic variation is generated by the geothermally active areas, which create their own microclimates. Whole valleys are warmed by steam or geyser fields. Kamchatka's climate is as diverse as its wildlife. You will find a moderate maritime zone on either coast, a continental zone in the Central Valley with 4 distinct seasons, and an Arctic zone in the northern parts of the peninsula. Huge amount of precipitation, presence of permafrost, long melting snow in the mountains, poor evaporation, and mountainous relief were key points in the development of an extremely dense hydro network of the Kamchatka Krai. There are more than 100,000 big and small lakes. Many have been created by volcanic forces, such as crater lakes, which often contain hot water and usually are quite small. They also tend to be situated at higher altitudes. Klyuchevskaya Lake is unique, however. It is an ancient volcanic crater, and with a relatively small size of 77 square kilometers, it is surprisingly deep, 316 meters. It is one of the deepest lakes in Eurasia. It was created due to a hollowing out of the Earth's crust during an eruption over 8,000 years ago. It was then filled with water from rain and melting snow. A few islands located on the lake were created by lava layers. There are also over 140,000 rivers and creeks in Kamchatka. The Kamchatka River, with a length of 758 kilometers, is the largest. And this is Klyuchevskaya Sopka. It is a stratovolcano, the highest mountain in Siberia, and the highest active volcano in Eurasia. It's 4,750 meters tall. Its first recorded eruption occurred in 1697, and it has been active almost continuously ever since. It was first climbed in 1788. No other ascents were recorded until 1931, when several climbers were killed by flying lava. It's literally one of the most dangerous volcanoes you can try to climb. The biggest problem isn't a sudden volcanic eruption, but rather the 45-degree slope and loose volcanic rocks. If you're going in a group, you wouldn't want to be the first going down. I read about an expedition of skiers who wanted to be the first to snowboard down this mountain. Apparently, the weather never settled down enough for them to be able to do it. But the crazy part was that in their tents at night, they would go to sleep wearing helmets because they were afraid of the flying volcanic rocks, which would puncture their tents and possibly hit them in their sleep. They had built a snow wall to hide their tents behind, but in the morning, the wall was shot up and there wasn't much of it left. I would love to see this volcano up close, but
one does not simply walk into Mordor.
It's also considered sacred by some indigenous people, being viewed by them as the location at which the world was created. So who are these people who consider these mountains sacred? Real quick, this is the Patreon map. Many thanks to all these amazing people to help make this show possible. If you want to have a spot, then reach out and book your place on the map. Captain James Cook wrote, "The smallpox made its appearance in 1767 and 1768. It was brought into the country by a Russian vessel bound to the eastern islands for the purpose of hunting otters, foxes and other animals. The person who had in his blood the fatal germ was a sailor from Okhotsk." So this spelled a dramatic end to the dominance of the various local tribes in the area, and it is believed to have killed 3/4 of the native population, just like in the Americas. The survivors intermarried and assimilated with the new population of Russians. They came to be known and are still referred to as Kamchadals. Although there are still small pockets of natives left, arguably it's the Itelmens and the Koryaks who are the most physically tied to the region historically and at present. The Koryaks live immediately north of the Kamchatka Peninsula and inhabit the coastlands of the Bering Sea. The Koryak are typically split into 2 groups. The coastal people are called Nemelan, meaning village dwellers. Their lifestyle is based on local fishing and marine mammal hunting. The inland Koryak reindeer herders are called Chauchu, meaning rich in reindeer. They are more nomadic, following the herds as they graze with the seasons. According to the 2010 census, there were 7,953 Koryaks in Russia. The lives of the people in the interior revolved around reindeer, their main source of food and clothing. They also used all the parts of its body to make sewing materials, tools, and weapons. The meat was mostly eaten roasted, and the blood, marrow, and milk were drunk or eaten raw. The liver, heart, kidneys, and tongue were considered delicacies. Salmon and other freshwater fish, as well as berries and roots, played a major part in the diet, as reindeer flesh did not contain some necessary vitamins and minerals. The Koryaks lived in dome-shaped tents called yayanga, and their framework was covered in many reindeer skins. The inland Koryak rode reindeer to get around, cutting off their antlers to prevent injuries. They also fitted a team of reindeer with harnesses and attached them to sleds to transport goods and people when moving camp. Today, however, the Koryaks use snowmobiles more often than reindeer. Koryaks believe in a supreme being whom they call by various names, such as This god is considered to reside in heaven, and when he wishes to punish mankind for immoral acts, he falls asleep and leaves man vulnerable to unsuccessful hunting or other ills. The Itelmens used to control the whole of Kamchatka, and they resided primarily in the valley of the Kamchatka River in the middle of the peninsula. Unlike the Koryaks, they never got into reindeer herding, but lived from fishing and hunting. Generally, young men seeking marriage joined the village of their wife. When a village became too large to sustain itself, it was divided, and a portion of the villagers would create a settlement at another point along the river. Itelmen lived in different houses during the summer and winter seasons. The winter house, which was inhabited beginning in November, was dug into the soil, about a meter or a meter and a half deep. An opening served as a smoke hole and an entrance, which was left open only when fires were lit. As the ground thaws in the summer, the floors of the winter houses began to flood. So in the summer months, the Itelmen lived in raised houses, and each family in the village lived in their own house, rather than sharing a large house as in winter. The extreme moisture of the climate required the raising of the homes for dry storage. The Itelmen subscribed to a polytheistic religion. The creative god was referred to as Kudga, while he is regarded as the creator of all things. The Itelmen attribute the problems and difficulties of life to his stupidity and are quick to scold or curse him. They believe Kudga to be married to an intelligent woman named Chachi, who was said to have kept him from much foolishness and to have corrected him constantly.
Your YouTube channel sucks. Get a real job.
Today, there are perhaps some 3,200 or more Itelmen left in Russia. It would be rude for me not to mention the most prolific and the most numerous inhabitants of the Krai. Kamchatka is the bear state of the Russian Federation. According to various estimates, there are between 15,000 and 30,000 bears here. The Kamchatka brown bear is the biggest brown bear in Eurasia, with a body length up to 3 meters and a weight up to 650 kilograms. So they're almost as large as the Alaskan brown bear, which are known to reach up to 680 kilograms. Such a high concentration of bears as in Kamchatka cannot be found anywhere else in the world. The safest and most impressive place to observe Kamchatka bears is the already mentioned Lake Kuril. And you must be escorted by armed rangers to travel there. Here they have more time to play with each other and for having rest, since food is extremely plentiful, especially during salmon spawning seasons. That is a fact which attracts wildlife photographers from around the world. These bears are generally not dangerous. Only 1% of encounters result in attacks. The first Europeans who went to Kamchatka in the 19th century, although surprised by the number and size of bears, observed that they were relatively harmless compared to their Siberian counterparts. However, in July 2008, a platinum mining compound was besieged by a group of 30 starving bears who ate 2 of the men and also trapped a group of geologists in the site. The weather was apparently too bad for a helicopter to fly in and rescue them. The attack was attributed to illegal overfishing and the bears not having enough food. Kamchatka is remarkable. I can't quite think of a place like it. other than the Kuril Islands. Continue your exploration of Russia's easternmost lands